Hey guys, in this video we're doing a full detail with a ceramic coating and talking about the entire process on this sweet Audi. So without wasting any more time, let's go ahead and get into it. Alright guys, let's go ahead and set up the context for this detail like we always do. Number one, this is an Audi Q7 and I believe it's a 2020. I could be wrong, it might be a 2019, but I believe it's the newest model they have, the latest year model. Anyway, this is my financial advisor's wife's car, so an important client and a good client. This car represents a lot of things that I want to break down. The first part of this video, we're going to be talking business stuff, and the second part of this video, we're going to be talking products, tools, and really how I applied this ceramic coating from NAS, y'all. It's their ZR53 coating. So first things first, I just want to talk a little bit about the condition of the vehicle. This Audi is in fantastic condition, and believe it or not, it's actually kept outside. It is not garaged. My financial advisor is building a new house right now, and they're living in a temporary house where they don't have space in the garage, and so this vehicle is kept outside and sometimes even under kind of smaller trees. However, that being said, not just the tires, wheels, wheel wells, glass, everything, but the paint is in absolutely unbelievable condition. I mean, it's absolutely beautiful, beautiful paint. And so while we are going to do a little bit of polishing, it's going to be very minimal, and we'll talk about that later. The second thing to understand is that this vehicle represents the exact thing that I talk about many different times on this channel. Number one, it is the perfect vehicle for a ceramic coating simply because when I get to work on a vehicle like this that is in absolutely pristine condition, I am not having to spend 48 hours, 2 or 3 days applying the ceramic. I can get it done in about, say, between 8 and 10 hours simply because applying a ceramic, no matter how great the car is still going to take some serious time if you're going to do it correctly. So this was about a 10-hour job. It took about 10 hours to finish completely, but I did finish it in one single day. And that is where you start to net over $1,000 a day with auto detailing. It's why I encourage people to do ceramic coatings. Though if you're beginning in the business, I completely understand this is not something you want to get into right away. But if you have any experience at all or a few years in and you've got a more established reputation, ceramics are basically 80 to 85% of what I do now other than my maintenance details. And so this is where you get into making, grossing and essentially netting over $1,000 a day in this business, and where you're talking about real profits. Now, that being said, not only is this an ideal situation simply because the Audi is in such fantastic condition in that I'm not going to have to spend a ton of time, say, correcting the paint and preparing, which is really where the time-consuming kind of time suck comes in when you're talking about ceramics, but it also represents the perfect ceramic cell simply because this is here's what I would say. My client here would say that this is kind of the best car she's owned. It's the newest kind of, what would I say? The most exciting car she's owned, and therefore the most emotionally attached she's ever been to a car in her life before. And so while, it's not like they drove beaters before this is just kind of the upgrade car that, you turn, 35, 40 years old and you're doing well in your business and you say, hey, I'm going to invest in a nice vehicle. This is what that is, and therefore it works as the perfect sell to put a ceramic coating on this, because while my customer might not understand the value of a ceramic coating, she's perfectly positioned, and ultimately he is perfectly positioned to hear me out when it comes to why this car needs a ceramic coating. Number one, it's super new, and this is going to protect it like crazy. But number two, if you wait, it's only going to get more difficult from here. And number three, this is going to help this Audi hold its value even more, because when you go to trade it in, which I'm sure you're going to want to do in just a couple years, this is going to maintain it in virtually perfect condition based on the coating I'm putting on it and based on the way it's going to be taken care of when you guys move into your new house, etc., etc. And so for those three reasons, it works as a fantastic situation to say, hey, this is the time to talk about a ceramic coating with somebody who not only can afford it, but also somebody who understands the value and who can at least understand, when explained, the value in something like this and why it would be so important. So I'm always looking for customers who are positioned to understand kind of the language I'm using in the value proposition when it comes to coatings like this. Now, for your reference, I'm using my electric pressure washer from Sunjo, and then I'm also using P&S Brake Buster on the wheel wells and the tires. And then on the wheels, I'm using Jax Wax's HD wheel cleaner, and it's actually a tire cleaner as well. Probably should have just used it on both, but didn't think about it at the time. And then to agitate it, I'm using my Speedmaster brush on the inner barrel of the wheels, and you guys can see these wheels, just like the rest of the car, are in pristine condition. There's not a ton of brake dust. This is the time to protect things like this. And then very simply, I'm using my work stuff detailing brushes on the face of the wheels as well, just to agitate those. And you guys saw I was using my long handle wheel well brush, not only to agitate the wheel well itself, which is fabric, by the way, on all 4 of these wheel wells, but also to agitate the sidewall of the tire as well, simply because there's not a ton of grunge or anything on it, so I don't have to do any crazy, cleaning. But I also saw some of that anti-ozonate start to surface. You can kind of tell the difference between muddy, dirt, grime on a tire and the anti-ozonate. The anti-ozonate is going to have more of a, almost what I would describe as like a, maybe, what would I say actually? Like a thick sort of patterned, pattern, I guess, a thick sort of pattern, or a more obvious, say, distinction as far as mud kind of looks like it's just sitting on there. It's like it's almost like it got slung on there. The anti-ozonate almost looks like exactly what it does. It almost is pulled out from the surface. There's almost a more clear line of demarcation when you're looking at the outer and the inner part of the sidewall. You can kind of tell this, the anti-ozonate almost sits more on the outer part of that sidewall, and there's kind of a more clear, set apart line there, more juxtaposition than when you're just dealing with strictly dirt and mud. That's one of the ways I can tell it's coming out there. Now, to be a little bit more practical, talking about some business-specific things. Number one, while I normally give you guys, exact numbers and stuff on the channel, sometimes I do like to play my cards a little bit closer to the vest, and so I will just word it like this, I guess. I don't do this kind of work for less than $1,000 minimum. And so, without giving too specific numbers, ceramic coatings, I would say a good minimum when you are talking about ceramic coatings. While I generally try to stay away from giving even specific minimum pricings, just because the auto detailing industry, depending on where you live and a bunch of different stuff, is so subjective. I think you have to be careful because it can be dangerous to give specific pricing stuff. Ceramic coatings tend to be a little bit more what I would call uniform across the industry, or a little bit more ubiquitous, I guess. And I would say that $1,000 minimum, no matter really what size vehicle you're talking about, I would say that is probably a good minimum. I don't really know many serious detailers who charge less than that, unless, of course, you're beginning in the business and you're beginning, say, in the ceramic part of your business. They say 50% of a watermelon is better than 100% of a grape. If your client is going to say yes to $750 and no to $1,000, in that case, you might, of course, again, in the beginning stages, you might say, well, you know what, I'm just going to charge that $750 because I'd rather walk away with, $75 an hour than nothing at all, even though I really wanted to, shoot for that $100, $150 an hour. Now, that being said, I want to touch on something that I just spoke about, I just talked about it just a second ago. One of the reasons people, I think, probably are afraid to get into ceramics are, number one, they question their abilities because, they feel like they have to get training and stuff like that, which I think is, wise. I think ceramics are one of those things where you should be a little bit more cautious. It's not like everything in the detailing world where you can just jump in and kind of learn on your own, though I do think the ceramic that I'm using in this particular video, the Nasial ZR53, it is definitely something a beginner can use and be very successful at. It'll also give you a good just taste and sort of feel of what a legitimate, serious ceramic is like, but at the same time, it's not going to cripple you if you mess up a couple things. You can, certainly fix that pretty quickly with polishing. Some of these other ceramics that are, I think people would probably call more entry level, I would say that while I like a lot of the entry level ones, they're almost so easy to use, I question how good they are. And while I don't have the timetables to give you, longevity, durability tests, things like that, because, you're talking about years at this point in time, I do just prefer the ones that even can be a little bit difficult to use for beginners. Those are still the ones I suggest for beginners. Now, one of the other reasons I think people are a bit wary to get into ceramics are simply because they are a more expensive service. And I think some guys are thinking, how in the world am I going to sell to my customer base $1,000 job? They're just not going to buy that. And the number one thing that I touched on a little bit earlier that I do want to talk about in a bit greater detail because it has worked very well for me is putting a ceramic into the context for the customer, putting it into the context of maintaining the value of the vehicle itself. This is a tried and true thing that I think maybe some people are skeptical of or question. A ceramic is so, and again, I'm talking from years of putting these on, even sometimes daily drivers. The way a ceramic will maintain the glass, wheels, paint, and other parts of a vehicle, this is the opposite of hype. This is not at all hype in the detailing industry. This is not at all a marketing gimmick. Yes, of course, there are better and worse products, but this is not at all a marketing gimmick. Sometimes people get really skeptical and put all the detailing industry into one single category, and while yes, I understand the cynicism, this is not one of those situations. A ceramic, at least all the ones that I suggest on this channel, have the ability to seriously maintain the condition of particularly the paint. And I've shown in a lot of different cases, even their ability to maintain the condition of the paint when the ceramic itself is not maintained at the highest level or with the most regularity in the world. In other words, even a ceramic that's not necessarily maintained on a weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, even bi-monthly case sometimes still stays in really fantastic conditions. Again, the ceramics that I suggest on this channel, we're talking about ceramics that are really durable, and we've even shown different chemical tests and things like that. This is not some sort of just little, baby product we're putting on these vehicles. And in saying that, my point is, when your customer goes to trade in the vehicle, assuming they're not just trying to run the wheels off of the vehicle, this can be something that, the way I word it is basically this. You are going to make your money back when you trade the vehicle back in, from the money that you put into the ceramic. I'll try to word that in a bit more simplistic way. The money that you pay up front right now that feels a little painful, sinking that money into a vehicle like this, is going to be made back, and potentially you could make more money in the trade-in, but you will at least make that $1,000 back, assuming you stick to that $1,000 minimum. You will at least make that $1,000 back in the trade-in. And while, of course, you can't guarantee this kind of thing, I think you should probably, be careful of that. I think it should be a conversation that comes up in some way or another. Potentially, and I think with a high probability, you will make that money back when you go to trade this in, because I know and you know that you're not going to be driving this car for the next 5 years. You're going to be driving it for the next 2-3 years, and then you're going to upgrade it. And of course, we could talk about a greater business conversation here, which is how do you target clients who do that kind of thing, which is, makes up pretty much 100% of my clientele. But the point here remains the same. I think a good analogy, even in my own business, is when I hire certain consultants to come in and help me do certain things that I'm doing online or whatever I'm doing. They say, hey, this is how much I'm going to charge on the front end, but when this product launches, when this launches, when you do this, this is easily going to be money that you make up in the sale of whatever the thing is we're talking about and walking through. And that's the way I word it with my customers. Of course, it helps when your customer is already kind of in the mindset of protecting their investment. But even just the other day, I actually got an interview with one of my new maintenance clients who I'm not going to put the interview on the channel. I'm going to put it in the course that I'm coming out with much later. But, unfortunately, you're not going to get access to that just with the free content. But all that being said, that customer said, listen, he said this specifically, I look at my car as an investment. I'm not looking at it as something that I'm just trying to beat up and drive the wheels off of. And so that customer, once again, is perfectly positioned for the services that I offer, and therefore kind of the value proposition just verbally that I'm presenting to them on the front end with certain jobs like this. Now, the next thing that I really want you guys to consider with this, and in a lot of ways you can consider this in a lot of different areas of detailing. Before I get into the meat of it, let's take carpets, for example. In many ways, or in many times, when I know that a customer calls me, and while they're not a total maintenance client, but they want me to come, every 3-4 months, I will put certain add-ons to the interior of their car, for example, fabric protector, upholstery protector, carpet protector. I'll put that on as an addition, sometimes without even telling them and not charging them any extra for it, simply because the cost is basically negligible for me based on my kind of profit and loss and what I charge at this point in my business. But even more so, more than from a money standpoint or from even just a value standpoint, the reason I'm doing that is because when I go to maintenance their car next time, when I see their car next time, which I know I'm going to, because I know I'm the first one in their head when they're talking about detailing when they want a detailer, it's going to be much easier for them to call me, whom they've already called, than it is to go out and find another person. When I go to maintenance their car a second time, third time, fourth time, and that part of the car has been protected, even though, yes, it has gotten really dirty since the last time I've seen it, I am going to be able to put that part of the car back into that 100% perfect condition as it was when the person bought the car. And while they might know I did or didn't put the fabric protector on it, regardless, they look at me as a sort of like superhero thinking, oh my gosh, how did you get these great results? I mean, this is like an amazing outcome. This is awesome. And so it just adds, it's kind of just long-term thinking versus short-term thinking. In many ways, that is how I like to talk to customers regarding ceramic coatings. Rather than talking to them just from a standpoint of, yes, it's going to protect your car, yes, it's going to keep the value of the car in a certain sense when you go to trade it in, in, and I'm sure you're going to be able to make that money back. That has happened more times than I can count in my customers' lifetimes, and I can even put interviews with customers where that's happened. I think that might be helpful for some of you on the channel. But rather than just leaving it there, we take it to, hey, when you want this car washed, when you want this car maintenance, it is going to make it so much, it's going to make it exponentially easier to clean this car in the future. So not only are you putting this sacrificial barrier on the car that while yes, it might get scratched up, yes, it might get etched in, yes, it might get beat up to a level, but we can polish that away and take the coating off, and we still have that underlying perfection or perfect paint, underneath when you go to trade it in. But in the meantime, when you own the car and when you're driving it, it's going to cost you far less because I can actually maintain the outside of this car in half an hour or less. And rather than an hour and a half maintenance, I can do this with less product, less time, less energy, and we can work out a deal that works for you where, hey, instead of charging you $150, why don't we call it $85? We'll do it on a monthly basis. It'll be much more simple. And bam, there you go. Another win-win, long-term thinking for you and your customer. Now, without moving on from that point too fast, I do want to kind of supplement it with a little bit of a qualifying factor, what I would say. Number one, I'm speaking in sort of generalities to, say, beginners or, say, people who are just starting to introduce ceramics into their business. So do I think it's necessarily a good idea long-term to start lowering your pricing based on the fact that you don't have to put in as much time? No, I do not. That is what I would call a time-driven pricing structure. It works on the variable of time and time alone, and it ends up being a long-term, a very poor way to scale and ultimately leverage your time. What I teach in my online course is actually how to build a time-driven pricing structure as a base, and then to put a value-driven pricing structure on top of that so as to add consistency, but also how to leverage your time and leverage your business to ultimately scale up your income exponentially and not just linearly based on how much time you put in. And so to be very clear here, in the beginning stages when you are building your business, I think this can be a very effective strategy. Hey, customer, I know you want this done. Let me tell you about all the advantages that you're going to get from it. This is going to take far less time to maintenance in the future because the ceramic coating is such high quality and it's on there, and it's going to be very easy to clean. I can work with you on price a little bit here simply because it's going to be very simple. In the future, once again, when you have plenty of business coming in, but plenty of cash flow, and you can ultimately leverage that revenue stream, you're not going to want to be lowering your price based on time you're putting in or not putting in. You want to be maintaining a price, and ultimately you want to be maintaining or raising your prices and maintaining or lowering the amount of time you put in. But once again, in the beginning, this can be a very, very effective way to leverage things as you're building a strong foundation. Now, speaking of long-term strategies, guys, if you like the information that you're getting here and you feel like this is valuable, then hit the thumbs up button below so that this video will rank just a tad better in the YouTube algorithm. The more thumbs up and likes we can get on this video, the more potential people can see it who also might need this kind of information. So again, if you like this video and you like what you're seeing and you like what you're hearing, then like the video itself so that we can push this out to more people. Now, just a quick little recap as to what you guys are seeing. After the wheels, tires, and wheel wells, I went ahead and foamed the car as a pre-wash, kind of pre-rinse stage. I used AM Details foam soap, and then I put in some Optimum Power Clean, which is kind of like it's just a great degreaser as a sort of supercharging that car soap because we are going to be stripping this paint completely. That's why I put that in. Also to just kind of agitate that dirt in a touchless way a bit more, simply because the paint is in pretty much 100% perfect condition. And so I just want to maintain that as much as I can. Then I went ahead and used an agitation wash with Optimum car soap. I'm using a lot of Optimum products in this video, not for any particular reason, but I just reached for it. And I kind of like to use their products on what I would consider higher quality cars, not such entry-level vehicles. Went ahead and did an agitation wash with the Microfiber Madness wash mitt, which is a new wash mitt I'm using. It's incredible. And while, yes, their products are a little bit more expensive, I mean, it really is fantastic. And it's such a great way to prepare for a ceramic coating just because the quality is so high. You're not going to be adding any imperfections to the paint, at all. Then I'm just using a lightly abrasive, or what would you call that? A light grade, not a heavy grade, clay bar here to clay all the windows, glass, plastics, and as well as all the paint, of course. drying with a waffle weave towel, and before I clayed, I used an iron remover from Renegade, their Voodoo iron remover. I generally like to use iron remover after I clay bar, but I get a lot of comments about it, and so I went ahead and just mixed it up here. And I will say, I don't think there's really any empirical evidence that using an iron remover before clay barring actually removes any significant amount of contaminants in a way that's going to reduce imperfections you're adding to the paint or abrading that you're doing to the paint. But that being said, I don't have any specific data to point to rest my case on, so I'll let that point go. After this, I'm simply going to be using the Optimum Paint Prep, which is always what you're going to want to be. You're going to want to use a paint prep always before you start polishing. And then we're going to start talking a little bit about polishing and getting into the ceramic coating itself. But before we do that, I want to talk about one last really important business point that I think is important to keep in mind in situations like this. I think in a lot of ways on social media, some guys who are wanting to get started in the business get a little discouraged simply because they're reading some of these Instagram posts and YouTube videos about, say, let's take ceramic coatings because this is what we're talking about and this is the point I'm making. And they read, oh my gosh, if you don't take 48 hours total to apply a ceramic coating, then you're a hack and you're not going to be profitable and you don't know what you're doing and you're not a talented detailer. And unfortunately, a lot of this noise is actually coming from people who don't run detailing businesses. And that's actually part of the reason why I show customer interviews and I show a lot of the behind the scenes stuff and I show different cars being detailed simply because there's a lot of people online who don't actually run detailing businesses and that's just the nature of social media. And this is not to name anyone specifically or anything like that. This is very simply the only reason I'm saying that is simply because I don't want you guys to be discouraged in reading, say, some of the forums or reading things on Instagram where it's like, unless you do this, then you will fail. Because simply put, that actually happens a lot in the ceramic coating world. And once again, just to be clear, I'm not actually talking about anybody specifically. I'm talking about a general ideology. I'm not talking about a person, okay? I'm talking about an ideological doctrine that seems to be uncompromisingly unwavering on social media, and I really don't understand why. And the only conclusion I've come to is just that many people who are saying things like that don't run businesses, and that's why they're making those comments, because it's not actually coming from a business perspective. It's coming from a sort of social media growth perspective, which, for better or worse, that is the nature of what's happening. So, but that being said, the point I want to make here is that in saying something like that, say the statement, you have to take 48 hours or say 24 hours to apply ceramic coating correctly. In saying something like that and sort of repeating an ideology like that, it is actually, you are completely, what would I say, ignoring other variables that ought to be considered in this equation that are not being considered, that are extremely important. For example, coming from somebody who's spent the last decade running an auto detailing business and ultimately growing it to a pretty large scale and doing things like ceramic coatings now mainly, one of the huge things that my clients value more than anything else is their time. And when I can apply something like this ceramic coating and give them their car back by the end of the day or by that night, that is of huge value to them. They are extremely grateful for that. And they, in many ways, would actually be fairly frustrated and feel fairly inconvenienced if I took the whole weekend or 3 days to apply something like this to their vehicle. It would actually create a lose-lose because they're already frustrated about the time it's taking, and now they're spending a significant amount of money to get it done, and so they're just pissed off by the end. And so the only point that I want to make there from just a business standpoint is very simply that there are a lot of variables that go into an analysis, like what's the best way to go about a ceramic coating? Of course, it's very situational by situational, but there are a lot of things that I would just say in general, avoid extreme ideologies when you're trying to build an auto detailing business, because a lot of times those extreme ideologies, like always do this or never do this, are ultimately very unhelpful and actually just come from a group of people who are not entrepreneurs and are not business owners, and so it's probably easier said for them than it is for somebody actually trying to build a profitable business. And so that's really the only point I want to make, because I get a lot of messages like that, and so I just wanted to encourage you guys, of course, be wary about some of the advice you get, and just make sure that it's grounded in solid experience and ultimately sound, I think, wisdom and logic. Now, that being said, I want to go ahead and move to some of the more practical things that you're seeing in this video. For example, the pad I'm using here is just a foam, 6-inch foam, well, 6.5-inch foam spider pad, and then it's a very light polishing, light cutting pad. I wouldn't even call it a cutting pad. I would just call it a light polishing pad. I'm also using Optimum Hyper Polish, which is definitely on my top 3 favorite polishes in the universe. It's one that I use all the time. The reason why I'm not taping off this Audi is because the Optimum Hyper Polish, if you've ever used it, it actually doesn't dust. If you get any sling at all, it's so minimal, I would just consider it negligible. And it's also because, I'm obviously not using too much or too little, but because I just know how much to use from a lot of experience doing paint correction. Even going over these body lines and character lines and seams almost in the paint where these panels connect, I'm not getting any buildup of polish whatsoever in those character lines and in those places where the panels meet. And so while I might get a tiny bit that it'll take 5 minutes to go clean up afterwards, that I'd rather spend my time doing that than spending 35-40 minutes taping everything off perfectly. You just have to be able to manage your time, and ultimately when you know how to combine the right tools and products together, you can ultimately manage that stuff a little bit better. I'm also using a swirl finder light from Max Shine. I talked about this in a separate video, I think. Actually, it's actually a new light that they partnered with a specific company to make, and it's a really, really fantastic swirl finder light. That's why I'm talking about it. I'm using it not only to check out my paint correction as I go around, but I'm also going to be using it to check for any high spots in the coating itself when I do apply it. And then I'm also using the Rupe's LHR21. I believe it's their Mark II. Their Mark III is now out, but this is their Mark II. It has seen some serious paint in its day, and I've probably been using this Rupe's for about the last 3.5 years, and so I should probably go ahead and invest in a new one, but it's still working great for me. The other thing here is, you will see one of the things I just wanted to note here. You will see sometimes I throw the cord over my shoulder. Sometimes I don't throw the cord over my shoulder. Like the auto detailing world in general, there is endless amounts of situations that you're going to find yourself in, and you're going to have to be able to adapt to those situations. And so once again, those extreme ideologies, always do this, never do this. If you don't do this, you're a hack. If you do this, you're a hack. Avoid those things. It's not going to help you build a business ultimately. And now a couple of the more minor details. The microfiber towel that I'm using here to pull off the polish as I go from panel to panel is actually from the Rag Company, and it is just their general purpose microfiber towels that I really, really like. They're very low GSM, great for pulling polish off of the paint. They're edgeless as well. And then I buy a lot of these more specific. I'm going to go through a bit more specific list of products that I'm using here that are a bit more expensive, a bit higher end. I get them from carsupplieswarehouse.com because a lot of times Amazon does not carry a lot of these more specific products. And at the end of the day, carsupplieswarehouse.com is just a great website to get this stuff off of. They've got deals going on and all that sort of stuff all the time. So anyway, I'm pulling it off with a Rag Company microfiber towel. I always, without fail, use a completely new microfiber towel when I'm pulling off polish, when I'm using my paint prep after I polish, and when I apply a ceramic coating. I never take a chance with a used microfiber towel that's been washed, even if it's been washed perfectly and maintained perfectly. I just don't want to take a chance. I want one that's right out of the package. When I'm taking the time, all of the time and energy that it takes to do paint correction and to do it well, I just don't want to take a chance of scratching or introducing any micro scratching into the paint, because while my customer might not notice it, I am going to notice it, and I just don't want that to happen. And so I always use new microfiber towels, and that's why I like the specific ones and why I'm talking about them here, because they come in a pack of like 15 or something, or maybe like 12, and so you have plenty of them, maybe 20 actually, and they're really, really great. And so anyway, I will just downgrade that microfiber towel after I use it here to something like waxing or putting a sealant on just average paint or something like that. I wanted to give you guys a little bit closer look with the light. And now that I've finished polishing with the Optimum Hyper Polish, I want to show you guys just the condition of the paint. You can see this swirl finder light finds swirls fantastically, and you can see there are literally no swirls. It's got a low and a high setting. I've just got it on the low setting here. It's also magnetic, so you can set it up on the paint or a cabinet or different things like that, or hang it. It's got a hanger in the back as well. But you can see how fantastic it is at just analyzing the paint and how incredible the paint looks. I mean, the paint is just in absolutely flawless condition. This is the only disappointing thing about this video. I used the Jaxed Wax Super Shine tire shine here. because I've been experimenting with it on some nicer vehicles, and I've liked it in some cases. And then in this case, I really hated it, and I should have just gone with my gut, but I didn't. And so the reason I'm putting it on before I put the paint, I take the paint prep, which I'm doing right now, to the paint, is simply because it's a spray-on coating. It's very specific, actually, a spray-on coating. If I get any overspray at all on the paint, I'm just going to take it off with the Optimum paint prep. Though overspray is really only going to be an issue when you're using an aerosol can sort of tire shine dressing, not a just regular trigger sprayer. That being said, the only reason I was disappointed in the Jax Wax Super Shine dressing is just because it's too shiny. And I always try to give products like really, really good testing grounds before I, make a decision on them. And I've probably used this on about 6 to 7 vehicles now, and it's just too shiny. And if I were to take this car out, 10, 15 minutes after I apply it, it would sling on the paint a lot. But because this car, it was sitting in my garage for another like 3.5, 4 hours after I applied it, that tire shine had totally cured to the tire and it did not sling whatsoever. But all of that being said, the process that you're seeing right now, very simply removing any oils or polishing oils or residue from the paint with Optimum Paint Prep or the paint prep of your choice, is one of the most important processes that you can do before you apply a ceramic. Do not speed through this. Make sure you hit every single area of the glass, every single area of the chrome, every single area of the paint, every single area of the wheels, all of that stuff. Make sure you do not speed up on this or cut corners. It is going to affect the way the ceramic coating cures, and you guys know, if you ever applied a ceramic coating, just do it right the first time. Now, I'm using the Nasiol ZR53 coating. I have told you guys in the past that this is one of my favorite coatings. This is a side note, but Nasiol is a Turkish company, and I've used their coatings for about the last 2 to 2.5 years. They're my favorite by far. Also, most people don't appreciate this kind of thing, but I feel like I want to mention it just because I absolutely appreciate it, and it's all about the details. Their packaging, even just down to their packaging of their products, it reminds me of the iPhone box, and I am a huge fan of Apple, and people who put this kind of care and attention and detail into even the packaging of their products, it just speaks to the deepest part of my soul. I love their packaging. It just is really, really great. Anyway, that being said, the ZR53 coating that I'm applying right here is probably my favorite all-in-one coating. It's what I suggest for beginners who might have a tiny bit of experience with ceramics, but not all that much. Number one, it comes with a ton of application pads. You're going to apply it kind of like an alcohol cotton swab. You put the cotton swab on the tip of the alcohol bottle, tip it over a couple times. That is how I apply the ceramic to the applicator. I simply put it on the tip of the bottle, tip it over a couple times. And then, of course, as I go and I have more and more ceramic on my applicator pad, I will use less and less. It also comes with 2 microfiber towels. The lower GSM one is what you're going to pull off the initial buffing of the ceramic coating, and then the second, more plush, higher GSM towel is going to be that one that kind of brings out that gloss and shine and really just removes any last-minute residues from the paint. The reason I'm such a huge fan of the Nasiol ZR53 coating is simply because even for a beginner who's never used a ceramic coating before, this is going to be one that is very, very not finicky. And there are many ceramic coatings that if you don't know what you're doing, you're going to find yourself in a world of hurt because you don't know what you're doing. They're extremely finicky. You don't have the right temperatures. You don't have the right lights. You don't have the right, setting to do it in. You don't have the right experience. You're not leveling it out the right way. All that sort of stuff affects the way a ceramic is going to cure to the paint. And while it shouldn't be overthought, it should be thought of at least well enough to do a fantastic job. And this is just one of those things in the detailing world where it really does not need to be oversimplified because it's not really that simple. That being said, the ZR53 coating comes with everything that you need. It comes with the coating itself. It comes with the 2 microfiber towels. It comes with the gloves. It comes with directions as well as a video that you can scan the QR code to see. So you can see that applied very simply. It also comes with a ton of applicator pads so that after I do about 4 panels, I will switch to a totally new applicator pad. Now you see I'm applying the ZR53 coating in a crosshatch pattern, and you guys are going to see a ton of different ways to apply this. I'm showing you guys, this is a longer video, I know, but I'm showing you guys all over the car exactly how I apply it. And ultimately, it's extremely, extremely easy to apply. And once again, I am speaking kind of relatively just based on other coatings I've used. But this one, relative to many, many other ceramic coatings on the market, is extremely, extremely easy to use. And it is one that I would suggest for beginners. Of course, with caution, apply it on your own car first, apply it on your mom's car, somebody who loves you first. Don't go apply this on customers' cars. But you guys are going to see I'm applying it not only to all of the paint, but also the headlights and any plastic pieces that I can see. I'm not going to apply it to the black trim, but I am applying it to any plastic pieces and of course, any clear-coated pieces being all of the paint and all of that stuff. You guys will also note that as I am removing it, I'm inspecting it from a lot of different angles. I'm taking out my Max Shine light to check that for high spots. One of the great things about this coating is that it's actually, in my opinion, pretty difficult to get high spots with this. I would kind of put this coating as a comparable one next to the G-Technic Crystal Serum Light that needs to be followed up by the EXO, but I'm not a huge fan of I like the G-Technic Crystal Serum Light, but next to this coating, I just far prefer this coating. I think it's definitely a superior coating. I think it lasts longer. I've done a ton of testing with this particular Naciol coating. I have a ton of experience with it, so yes, I'm a little biased, but it is just a really, really great coating. The other thing is that it's very simple to apply with these applicators. I don't have anything that like CarPro puts in the box as far as the CarPro kind of looks like a sanding block that you wrap the applicator around. While I like those kind of things, it does kind of get difficult to maneuver those things in all of the body lines, contour lines, cracks, crevices. Whereas when you have an applicator like this and a coating that's very, very easy to level out and produce kind of that level playing field across the paint, and it's really hard to get high spots with it, this just becomes way quicker and also way easier. So you guys are going to see how easy that is to apply and how really incredible the end result looks. The only other thing that you're going to see in this video that you might notice, well, actually a couple things. Number one, when I went to the other side of the car, when I finished this side as well as the back, I went ahead and switched out my initial buffing microfiber towel, that low GSM towel. I went ahead and threw that away, and I pulled out a new one from the Rag Company, the same one that I used to remove with the Optimum paint prep. Not the same exact towel that I put the paint prep on, but the same exact brand of towel. I took it from the same package. It's totally new, but I would suggest that, especially with your initial buffing microfiber towel, not necessarily the second plush one that you see. I'm going to use that all the way around the car. But with the initial one, I do think it's good to have 2 or 3 of those depending on how big the car is and the specific situation. I don't really love to use the same exact initial buffing towel across the entire vehicle, just because you guys know ceramics are kind of comparable to like a thin little layer of glass. You know, they're made of basically SiO2, and when they're left to their own devices, they pretty much turn into like glass crystals. And so while I don't think it's going to happen in this span of time on the towel, it's just one of those things that, yes, it does harden over time when left outside or left in just room temperature. And so I just like to switch out that towel just as a safety precaution. And then on top of that, if you guys want to take a safety precaution right now, just go ahead and click that thumbs up button below this video. Smash the like button just to make sure, because this video is so safe and full of such great information for people to take and apply. And you guys know that you can apply this. We want to get this video out to more people so that they can get this good information. So if you like this info, smash the like button. Now, the one thing that you're going to see kind of in scenes like this or shots like this that I got with my nice camera here is you're going to see as I remove the coating from this part of the vehicle. By the way, I would let the coating cure for about 30 seconds per panel. When you remove it, you're going to see as I push on the panel to remove it with that initial buffing buffing microfiber pad, or what am I saying? Microfiber towel. You're going to see that there's going to be a sort of bowing in the paint. It's almost going to look like you can see the reflection in the paint. The things kind of look a little bit warped. That's actually kind of a sign that the ceramic coating has cured, at least at that surface level, to the paint. And as you're pulling it off, that visual appeal, that almost like ultra gloss, that as you kind of press in to remove it, it looks like it's warping those things that it's reflecting off of. That is part of the sign that the ceramic coating is on there. So that's one of the things I like to look for, just to make sure that I let it cure long enough. That 30 seconds, it only takes about a 30-second cure time. It's not going to be very long. I would not leave it for like a minute and a half. If you did, it's still not impossible to pull off, but yes, this coating does get difficult to pull off after about 30 seconds. It doesn't need to be left for any longer than that. And on a more practical note, one of the questions that I get a lot of times with ceramic coatings is kind of in the application. People fear that they're going to get high spots, or they're not leveling it out well enough, or something like that. The great thing about this particular Naciol coating is that while yes, you guys see I'm going in a crosshatch pattern, and of course I'm being very, very intentional about where I'm putting the coating and where I'm not putting the coating. As you guys can see, I've got my glasses on, I've got my light that I'm looking at, I've got a lot of different things looking at a lot of different angles, I've got great garage lights in my garage. The thing that you really don't need to worry about with this coating is that kind of leveling. Of course, no ceramic coating, generally speaking, is like a self-leveling product, but there are, I will say, just from using a lot of ceramics, there are coatings that like I've kind of been alluding to, are far more difficult to deal with in the realm of, like, say, getting high spots and removing it and leveling it out and making sure that there's a uniform kind of amount of product across each part of the panel that you're applying it to. This is one of those coatings that you don't have to worry about that at a high level with. You guys see that, once again, I am going in that crosshatch pattern, but I'm also going over some of the areas that I've already gone over several times to kind of push that coating out, level it out. One of the strategies that you can use if you are kind of having a hard time with that is that as you apply the coating to the panel, almost treat it like a picture frame or like a puzzle, say. Yeah, a puzzle is probably a greater analogy. When you build a puzzle, you want to make sure you get all the border pieces done first so that you can work from the outside in. I would suggest you do that with ceramic coatings. Once again, you're not really going to have this problem with this particular coating because it really is a really high quality coating. It's been manufactured and just engineered at a chemical level really, really well. But so I'm talking a lot, I'm having to catch my breath, but starting from the outside in will help you to push, well, probably the best way to say it is it will help you get a more even layer of product across each part of the panel that you're applying it to, because as you work from the outside in, you're almost taking less and less of the product with you. And it's much easier to buff off when done in that pattern. It's almost like, I'm trying to think of maybe like a more scientific or logical way to lay that out of why that is. But basically, if you're putting the majority of the product on the outside, as you pull inside, it's much easier to get a uniform layer than it is to work from the inside out. You've got almost just you've got like too much product concentrated in that middle area. And it's hard to push the excess product when it's concentrated in that tiny area from in to out. Whereas when you make like a big square or a big circle or something like that, it's much easier to pull that in as you're going inside. So hopefully that made sense what I was just describing there. But that's a very common strategy. A lot of times they'll teach you in different ceramic trainings and things of that nature. Now, in a couple of the shots that you're about to see, a couple of the angles that I got with my camera as we're finishing the vehicle here, you're going to see that when the ceramic coating gets applied, it does develop that kind of hazy appearance that you would experience with like a paste wax or something like that, though the best way I know how to describe what a ceramic looks like as you're applying it to the paint is almost like you took some oil and rubbed the oil onto the paint. If you've ever seen oil that's been dripping out of like a big truck muffler or something like that on the interstate, or in like a parking lot, and then it rains a little bit and then the sun comes back out, you can see the oil resting on top of the water, that hydrophobic oil resting on top of the water, and it gives a sort of rainbow appearance as well. But it almost just looks sort of like something that you would see like in a cartoon, kind of like it's like I don't know how else to describe it. It's just like that rainbowy kind of slick appearance. That's what you're going to see like in this shot right here. It's got that haze, and you can see the streaks from where the ceramic is and is not applied and kind of where that line of demarcation is. Part of the reason why you want to go in that crosshatch pattern is because it is going to smooth that out. Just going in one direction is not going to cover each part. But all of that being said, the reason I say that is because they call it tacking up in the ceramic world. So when a ceramic sits on the paint and hazes like that, it quote unquote tacks up, and you get that kind of rainbowing, streaky, sort of oily appearance. And so sometimes you kind of make the mistake of thinking that the ceramic is not covering every part of the surface, because it does kind of look very stringy. I guess stringy is probably a good word for it. Stringy and streaky, but nonetheless, that is actually just the tacking up of kind of that oily appearance. It's not because it's not covering every part of the surface. And so definitely expect to see something like that. I will say in most cases, basically across the board with ceramics, when you see that hazing, when you see that tacking, it is time to pull it off. And so once again, this one has about a 30-second time that I would let it sit on the paint. But other than that, go ahead and start wiping it off. The initial buffing is going to be kind of the game changer here. You want to make sure that you are spending the time necessary with the initial buffing of your microfiber towel. You can see I'm using that new microfiber that I talked about. I threw the other one away. This is a totally new one for this side, but I'm spending a lot more time on the initial buffing off of the coating than I am on using the kind of plush ceramic towel. So that is going to be kind of the crux of your issue with the ceramic. This plush towel, this second one I'm using, is not designed really to pull off the coating. It's really designed to take any tiny, tiny, tiny residue off, and at most, again, that tiny residue, but also it's going to just bring out that gloss, the visual appeal. It's going to kind of just take any tiny last minute things off and bring out that awesome gloss. But that first initial buffing is really where you want to spend your time, and you want to make sure you're using a GSM of, a lower than your average, say like 350, something that's a lower pile and something that you can throw away. Not spending a ton of money on these towels because they are going to be totally thrown away, but they do need to be high quality towels. You need to make sure you're not just, ruining all of the preparation work that you just did to get this coating on the paint in the first place. Now guys, with that being said, the last thing you're going to see in this video is that I am applying another Naciol ceramic product to the windshield, and it is their wipe-on ceramic little towelettes, and it's a super easy process. I want to explain it really quickly as we're about to see it. Basically, it comes in a box with one wipe that is a cleansing wipe and two wipes that are the actual product. The really cool thing about this Naciol windshield, sort of like rain repellent ceramic product, is that it actually doesn't take any buffing off with any microfiber towels. Much like the Cerakote trim product, they're pre-wet, pre-moistened, like the chemical is pre-put on these little towelettes, and as you wipe them into the windshield, it not only puts the product on and cures to the glass, but it also actually buffs the product off as well. So you don't have to follow up with a microfiber towel or any sort of buffing stage. You literally just keep working it into the glass until it's buffed off on its own. And so once again, you simply, of course, I would prepare the glass at an extreme level like I did in this video, but you simply use that one cleansing wipe on both halves of the windshield, and then you have one wipe of the ceramic product for each half, dividing it into a half of the windshield. And once again, I simply apply it around the borders like I do, like I said, starting from the outside in, and you can see the product unboxing here. And then I simply buff in a circle, with a pretty good amount of pressure, because you're not going to, scratch up the glass. It's totally cleansed. And you simply buff that off with the towel that it comes with, and it puts this really long-term awesome protection onto the windshield. And so this is just another great way to, while the customer is not paying me to polish all of the glass and apply a ceramic to all the glass, I can apply a product like this, which is ceramic protection, and it's going to give you just really awesome results. The very last thing I'm going to do is simply apply a bit of a spray ceramic to the wheels after I clean them off, and then we're going to look at the after result. So guys, once again, hit the thumbs up button if you enjoyed this video. Check out the rest of the simple process here, and then we're going to take a look at the after result. Alright guys, that's it. Thank you so much for watching. As always, if you want to see the product, specifically the ceramic coating used here, as well as any other products and tools, there'll be an organized list below this video where you can see all of those very conveniently. If you haven't yet subscribed to the Wilson Auto Detailing channel, but you love videos like this, then go ahead and hit the subscribe button and tap the bell icon so that you get notified when I publish videos in the future so you don't miss anything. As always, thank you so much for watching. Keep working hard, and I'll see you guys in the next video.